Hey everyone, I mentioned this briefly in my video yesterday, but I didn't really go into detail because it's really not what the video was about. But I'll quickly talk about this. I don't know if you've seen her yet or not, but Omar Fateh has lost his endorsement from the Democratic Party in Minneapolis. He was running for mayor, if you didn't know this. He's a Somali, which isn't necessarily the most important part. It's his policies that are the important part, which are he wants to make housing affordable, but which is a great idea, make housing affordable, but he wants to do it like Mamdani by taxing the rich higher and basically stealing from the rich and giving to the poor. But we're not Robin Hood up in here, we're capitalism. He also wants to take guns away from people. He wants to defund the police, which we just saw what happened in Minneapolis. So yeah, Omar, okay. But his opponent, Jacob Frey, isn't any better. We just watched a video a few hours ago of mine where I talked about him wanting to take people's guns away. He doesn't talk about defunding the police so much or anything like that. But so anyway, he's not really a better candidate. But I know that Minneapolis is not going to vote in a Republican, which would be their best option. But they're not going to, ever, I'm sure, with their massive Somali presence. And these people are conservative people. These are not left-wing people. These are conservatives, but they vote for the left wing because the left wing is stupid and they can manipulate them and implement their little socialist ideologies and everything like that. That's why they vote for the left. It's not because they agree with gay marriage or they agree with equal rights for all or women's rights or anything like that. It has nothing to do with that. That all goes against their religion. If you've ever read the book, it tells you that. It's right all in here. They don't agree with that stuff. They just vote for Democrats because they're easily manipulated and they do stupid shit. So I wanted to talk about this briefly. There's not really much to say, but I think that some of you might be interested in the fact that he is no longer able to run for mayor, and the organization, the DFL, the Democratic Farmer Labor Party, is now suspended from endorsing anyone for a couple of years because there were a bunch of nonsense things that were happening during their voting process. All right, so in July at the Minneapolis DFL convention, Omar Fateh, advocating progressive policies like rent control, affordable housing, and higher taxes on the wealthy, won the party's mayoral endorsement with over 60% delegate support. However, Mayor Jacob Frey's campaign, which we don't like him either, challenged the results, citing significant irregularities in the voting process. A review by the DFL's Constitution, Bylaws, and Rules Committee found substantial failures. An electronic voting system undercounted by approximately 176 ballots on the first round. A candidate, Dwayne Davis, was improperly eliminated despite qualifying for the next round. Issues with security. A credentials book was lost. A master check-in sheet was unsecured, and unauthorized access occurred to key documents. So, obviously, Omar's campaign denounced the decision. Ilhan Omar is livid and screaming at the top of her lungs on camera. Not really at the top of her lungs, but I've never seen her raise her voice, really. But we don't like her, so I mean that's not a factor. She's corrupt, and so is Omar Fateh. So I don't really know. I don't know of any other cases where this has necessarily happened to compare it to, but obviously there were significant failures in this voting process, and I think that they're probably being investigated to a further extent because this is not the first time that there has been voter fraud or things that have been happening regarding Omar Fateh.
A state senator leaves out a side door without taking questions after a long ethics hearing today.
Senators are looking into a pair of Republican complaints against DFL Senator Omar Fateh. Political reporter Theo Keith is at the Capitol for us tonight. So Theo, what do these complaints allege and how is Fateh responding?
Amy, one of the complaints seeks an investigation into Fateh's ties to a federal voter fraud case. The other one that came up today accuses Fateh of seeking state money for a nonprofit that ran free ads for him in 2020. Fateh says he paid for those ads.
I do.
Senator Omar Fateh sworn in along with his Republican accusers. The Senate's ethics panel quickly took up a complaint accusing Fateh of seeking state grant money for a Somali broadcast outlet that ran free ads for him in 2020.
Hello, my name is Omar Fateh.
The ads do not show Fateh paid for them. His campaign finance reports didn't either until Fateh changed them on Tuesday. Fateh also provided receipts from Cash App, a mobile payment service, showing two $500 payments. His attorney acknowledged an error, but not a scandal.
The allegations before the subcommittee today are fundamentally based in rumor.
Somali TV's president says he forgot to include Fateh's payment disclaimer on the ads, but Republicans pushed for further investigation.
I would argue that none of the information that they provided disproves our claims.
The ethics panel has two members from each party. One of Fateh's fellow Democrats said she believed him.
He's my colleague. I have no reason to believe that that's not true.
The panel did not start considering a second complaint, which seeks to investigate a federal voter fraud case in which Fateh's brother-in-law was convicted last month of lying to a grand jury. In the fallout, Fateh's legislative aide has left the Senate. Fateh left through a side door without taking questions. The senator's attorney would not explain more.
Again, I have no comment on anything else today. Today for the hearing, we did go over complaint number 1, and I've already given my comment on that.
This is the first time in 7 years that the Senate Ethics Panel has met. It is meeting again next week to take up that second complaint and to decide whether to authorize an investigation of Fateh. Now, Fateh is running for re-election this fall, but he has drawn a DFL challenger in Minneapolis Teachers Union official Sean Layden. Randy?
I think it's also worth noting that he has also been vocally in support of a couple of different massive fraud schemes, including Feeding Our Future.
My name is Omar Fateh. I'm the state senator for District 62, which is in South Minneapolis. I want to thank first all of you for sticking together, for working together, for fighting. I want to thank our organizers, Mahad, Ikram, other folks that helped lead this fight. And I want to thank also Amy and her team, Feeding Our Future, for making this first court victory a reality. So first, I want to say thank you to all of you.
A privilege to announce the guilty verdicts in the case of United States versus Amy Bach and Salim Saeed. Today, after 6 weeks of trial, the jury delivered a quick and unequivocal verdict. Guilty on every single count. As you know, Amy Bach masterminded a $250 million fraud scheme. It was the largest COVID fraud scheme in the country. And what Bach and her co-defendants did was reprehensible. During COVID, while so many were trying to be helpers, Bach and Saeed were thieves. They used a time of crisis as their golden opportunity to enrich themselves and their criminal partners. Outlandishly so. And every step of the way, Bach fought to keep her fraud scheme going. Today, her efforts to lie, to blame others, to escape responsibility, all came to an end.
A Hennepin County judge is ordering a housing developer to return what could be more than $1 million in deposits for a new community that was never built.
Nalosha Development promised a path to home ownership for Somali families on nearly 40 acres of land just off I-35 in Lakeville.
Investigative reporter Eric Rasmussen's been following this story for more than a year now, and he's here with the questions that remain for.
While I did say earlier that it's not important that he's Somali, there is a pattern coming up here throughout Minneapolis and Minnesota in general. There is a pattern. All of these frauds, and now Amy isn't Somali, but the other people that were working for Feeding Our Future, a lot of them were. A lot of the people that were convicted and the person who was running this program was also Somali. And we've seen video clips of Omar saying how he works with other Somali senators and people in the House to pass things. So it is, and we know about Ilhan Omar, Lord have mercy on our souls. We know how corrupt she is. We know how she hates America. So, I mean, you still also have to wonder, while I'm saying it's him being Somali wasn't the most important that I was saying, there is a pattern arising regarding the Somali residents in Minnesota, obviously. So one has to wonder, if we're using the scientific process, what exactly is going on with the Somali communities in Minnesota.
For those families.
And of course, the biggest question of all, will those families actually get their money back? We tried to ask that question of the developer today, now that a new ruling has effectively shut down his company and determined he violated consumer fraud protection laws.
The challenges facing our community are only getting worse.
For years, Abduwali Abdullahi and his Nalosha development promoted this dream of a new community for Somali families in Lakeville. In reality, the land in question still looks like this, and now a judge says time has run out. In a default judgment against Nalosha, the court is ordering the company to pay back clients who handed over pre-reservation fees worth $25,000.
And that's $25,000 each. That's how they get to the $1 million number.
The lawsuit filed by the Minnesota Attorney General said Nalosha collected more than $1 million from families, but has provided no answers about what happened to that money. When we rolled up to the Nalosha offices here in Eden Prairie, I spotted the owner, Abduwali Abdullahi, standing right here loading up this U-Haul truck. But by the time we could stop our car and get out to try to talk to him, he was gone. After we found this eviction notice on the door to his office, Abdullahi texted me that he was not available to comment and asked us to leave the premises immediately. 5 Investigates found he's also the target of lawsuits from individual clients still waiting on refunds. One calling out a false house project, and another writing, "I have been lied to constantly and given a bounce check." The judge in this case will now hold another hearing to figure out exactly how Nalosha is going to pay back its clients. And, you know, I talked to some of them on the phone today. They tell me they still fear they won't see a dime of that money they put down. Of course, it was all in hopes of finally owning a home. And late this afternoon, Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison, well, he called it, quote, fraud, plain and simple.
So there's more to this story still.
You know, we'll keep.
I don't know about y'all, but it seems like there's a lot of fishy scandals going on in the Somali communities in Minnesota, and Omar Fateh has supported too many of them for my liking. So I personally, if I was a Minnesota resident, if I was a Minneapolis resident, I wouldn't want him to be my mayor, but I also wouldn't want Jacob Frey to be my mayor either. So whatever, I guess we can just pray. We can just pray for Minnesota and Minneapolis, that maybe one day their residents will wake up and realize that these people are lying to them, promising them things that they can't have. Like, it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. Socialism has not worked anywhere. It just doesn't work. And it's not welcome here in the United States. So while I'm glad that he's lost his endorsement, learning the last few days more about Jacob Frey and listening to him is like, it's kind of like a bittersweet thing, you know? So I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Hit the like button. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss any more content, and I will see you on the next one.